Laura's Gift by Annemarie O'Brien. Chapter 13, The Black Box. For several weeks after the hunt, Papa remained to himself. The only shimmer of joy I saw in his face was when he held Bowden, and that wasn't all that frequent, since Papa spent most of his time at the kennel. When our paths did cross, Papa barely acknowledged me and often darted away in a new direction, as if I were a skunk with a raised tail.
Papa won't talk to me, Matushka. His silence is worse than his bark.
Losing Bori has been hard on him, even more so when I told him that you had wanted to warn him not to go on the hunt, Mama said. He has much to think about now. His whole world of beliefs and rules has flip-flopped. He's struggling to sort it all out and make it right for you, himself and the future of the dogs. Give him time to mull over all of this. I have faith that he'll come around and accept your visions for the gift that it is. Mama's smile hugged me. I wish I could tell you more. The rest should come from your Papa. When it does, it shall make sense. Patience, Dorgaya.
I'm tired of being patient. I want things between me and Papa to return to what it once was, before Bowden was born and when Papa let me shadow him at the kennel.
Be careful what you wish for, Larochka. At first, I shrugged away Mama's advice. There was nothing I cherished more than my childhood memories of Papa and the dogs, but her words lingered with me. During Papa's period of silence, I split my time between my kennel chores and at Mama's urging, as well as my responsibilities caring for Bowden. I couldn't bear letting all the work fall on Mama. Despite coming from hardy stock, Mama had slowed since Bowden's birth. Not surprisingly, news about Tsar had spread quickly. Requests to breed him with other borzoi from other kennels came in every day by telegram. Tsar had become a regional hero, yet Papa still refused to acknowledge Tsar for the fearless hunter that he was. Papa's gloomy mood over the loss of Bori seemed to have cast a spell over the entire kennel and its staff. Nothing lifted Papa's spirits, not even the Count's announcement of a celebration in joint honor of Zola's litter, as was the tradition, and of Tsar's triumph over the Red Thief. Around Papa, his staff behaved in a mournful manner. As soon as Papa was out of earshot, all anyone, including Maxim, could chirp about was the upcoming celebration and the champagne and caviar upon which we would feast. The night of the celebration, under a near full moon, I took my favorite red ribbon from my braid and tied it around Tsar's neck. Mama and I wore our best clothing, made of red brocade with gold ribbon borders, and donned matching headdresses decorated in gold colloons that Mama had made for special occasions. At Mama's insistence, Papa put on his finest shirt, and then he groomed the long black hairs of his beard. He ripped through the knots without a single flinch, as if all feeling had left him, as if life no longer existed inside him. Mama took the brush from him and gently combed through the knots. Smile, dear husband. There's much about which to be joyous. Of that I don't doubt, for the Count wouldn't extend his hospitality over nothing, Papa said. But I'm lost inside myself. I can't find my way to the truth. Until I had learned to trust my gift, I too had felt lost inside myself. Part of me wanted to fit in and follow in Papa's boots and live by the golden rules, as he and his forefathers had always done. Another part of me saw the good in my gifts, for my visions spoke the truth to me and had become too real to ignore.
Trust in yourself, Tayatya, I said. You'll find the truth.
For the first time since the hunt, Papa's eyes met mine. He stared into them as if the truth lived inside of me. Do your visions come from behind your eyelids? He asked. Papa caught me by surprise.
Yes, how did you guess?
I understand more than you think, Lara. Thousands of twinkling lights glimmered from the ballroom's chandeliers and reflected off the gilded moorings. Vast oils of past hunts and former counts with their dogs hung from the ceiling to the waxed parquet floors. Best of all, Tsar was received in a manner fitting his new status, and Papa's staff chanted Tsar's name in a play on words with the word Tsar. Long live Tsar! Long live Tsar! Long live Tsar! Everyone chanted. It even made Papa smile. Soon the servants joined the chorus, as did the guests. The noise woke Bowden, and though startled at first, he too eventually blended into the singing buzz with his babbling. Tsar held his head a little higher and puffed out his chest as he pranced beside me toward the tables that lined the perimeter. On them were set all of the usual foods to celebrate the birth of a litter: black caviar served on silver platters, sour cream brimming from crystal bowls, stacks of warm blini wrapped in linen spun from silk, and stuffed suckling pig dressed in horseradish. In honor of Tsar were 2 roasted pigs spread out along a grand table that could easily sit 30 people. They were the biggest pigs I'd ever seen. Ornate mahogany stations were set up in each corner of the grand ballroom. Upon each station sat sparkling flutes arranged in tidy rows. Buckets upon buckets of iced champagne, primed and ready to be served, covered the outer perimeter of the floor. "I should preside among my staff on the dais," Papa said. As if I were invisible, he bent down, kissed Bowden's nose, and then left Mama and me. For as long as I could remember, I had always joined Papa and his team on the dais. In celebratory moments like this one, I willed Papa to turn around and invite me too, but he kept walking. With Bowden in one arm, Mama wrapped her free arm around me. "Where you stand together holds no relevance, Laura. What matters most is the truth." "Still it hurts. Tsar belongs up there more than anyone," I said, stroking his head. "Your Papa's stubborn and will eventually come around," Mama said. "He loves his work too much not to. Which reminds me, if I hope to keep my job, I should check on the Countess. She's wearing a gown with a back zipper that says 'Stubborn as your Papa.' Will you be all right?" I nodded and tried to take Bowden from Mama. "I'll keep him. This is just as much your night," she said. Despite so much tasty food around me, I wasn't hungry. Still, I heaped spoonfuls of suckling pig, Tsar's favorite, onto a small plate and fed him one piece at a time, which he gently took from my fingers. "Congratulations!" Ruslan rushed up and gave me a mighty pat on the back. I almost didn't recognize him, all cleaned up in a crisp, saintly white shirt. "Everyone's talking about Tsar," Ruslan said. "You must be proud of him."
"For me, he's still the same splendid dog."
"Of course he is," Ruslan said. "Others give a chance to catch up to what you intimately know about Tsar. Sometimes there are hurdles in front of us of which we're unaware."
"You're right."
For something weighed on Papa. I could feel it. "In memory of your big moment, I've made something for you." Ruslan pulled out a small black lacquer box of paper mache from his pocket and handed it to me. On top was painted an almost iconic image of a white borzoi, true to Tsar from head to toe, standing proudly over a dead wolf of silvery red-tipped color. I fingered Tsar's face as if it were really his, for Ruslan captured the pools of courage in his almond-shaped eyes. Around the edge of the box were swirls of gilded curls, a tiny detail that matched the curls of Tsar's white fur.
"You made this for me?"
"From all the stories I heard about the hunt from you, Alexander, and the Count, I couldn't get Tsar's image out of my mind," Ruslan said. "So I painted him out of my head, so I could proceed with my real work." I placed the small black box in front of Tsar. Like any dog hopeful for a bite of meat, Tsar eagerly sniffed at it and quickly lost interest. "Hopefully it pleases you more than it did Tsar," Ruslan joked.
"It does. Thank you, Ruslan. I'll keep it for as long as I live."
"The box is small enough to fit in your pocket," Ruslan said. "No matter what, Tsar will always be close to you." Just then a trumpet sounded, and the Count and his family made their grand entrance into the ballroom. The Count and Alexander proudly wore their military uniforms in honor of the Tsar. The Countess drew oohs and ahs from the rich, deep blue silk gown she wore, with diamonds sewn around its jeweled neck. In her arms, she carried Almaz, wearing a diamond-encrusted collar in a pattern similar to the one around the neck of the Countess's dress. The Count took a position on the dais next to Papa. He looked more tired than usual and worn down. His bookkeeper stepped forward and handed Papa a bag of gold rubles. Papa nodded to the Count and tried to look pleased, but I could tell from Papa's eyes that no amount of gold rubles could replace Bori. "May the festivities begin!" the Count announced. In one hand, the Count picked up his saber, and in the other a bottle of champagne. He took the saber and grazed it along the side of the bottle several times, until he beheaded the bottle in one quick slash. Champagne bubbled up as he handed the bottle to one of the servers. The Count continued to open dozens of bottles, one after another, in the same manner. The servers quickly poured champagne into toasting flutes. They served the Count and his family first, and then came Papa, Maxim, and the rest of his kennel hands. Tsar and I should have been among those standing around the table with Papa. When everyone had a glass, the Count raised his high above his head. "To another healthy litter. May there be more white pups like Tsar in the future." As the Count took a sip, he added, "Long live Tsar Nicholas!" He nodded first to his wife, then to Alexander and Papa, and then to each of the kennel staff until he finally nodded to the rest of us. I clinked glasses with Ruslan, and then, like everyone else in the room, we followed the Count's lead and took a long sip. Alexander spoke next. "To friendship!" He smiled at me and raised his glass. Again, Ruslan and I clinked glasses and drank along with everyone else in the room. Spirits were on the rise. I could feel it in the air. Papa raised his glass and spoke third, nodding first to the Count and then to Alexander. "To those of us who can't be here," he toasted in honor of Bori. When Papa lowered his glass, the Count followed with a closing toast. "To Ryzar, the Knight of Knights, and his defeat of the Red Thief." I patted Tsar on the head and everyone cheered. "Pedodna," the Count added up. "Bottoms up," the Count added. "Bottoms up." To that, everyone clinked glasses and drank to the bottom. More bottles were opened and poured. I was not in the mood to celebrate. It felt wrong to not to be under Papa's wing. I bid good night to Ruslan and was searching for Mama when Alexander appeared. "May I steal you away for a moment?" he asked. Tsar and I followed him into the Count's library, shelved with books from floor to ceiling along each of the 4 walls. "It's you who deserve the credit," he said. I braved to meet his eyes. They were like an ocean of blue, so vast, yet far from my world. We clinked glasses and he toasted. "To my crystal ball," I blushed and took a small sip. "How is it that you always know where to be?" Alexander pressed. "I'm sure it wasn't a coincidence that you hid yourself on the sledge or sat with Tsar the night of his birth, or sat with Zola the night of her birth. And there are so many other times I could list. Luck, I suppose." I couldn't tell him the truth as much as I wanted to, as much as I had always wanted to tell him over the years. "Then I wish I had your luck," he said. "Be careful what you wish for," I thought. "To carry a gift like mine brings its own burdens." "It's your turn to make a toast." The way Alexander looked at me made me feel like a treasured friend spun from sugar.
"Jamais ces chiens plus cuitot," was the first thing that came to me.
"That's not a toast," Alexander said. "Try again." I looked down at Tsar for inspiration. His trusting eyes made me smile when I thought of Papa's rules and how they interfered with my dream of breeding borzoi worthy of the Tsar. My smile faded, and when I thought of my future as a dressmaker and Papa's wish to marry me off to the midwife's nephew, it all seemed so hopeless. And that was when the words for my toast came to me.
"To the hope of hopeless matters."
"To the hope of hopeless matters," Alexander repeated. We clinked glasses and drank until not a single drop of champagne remained. "With the pressure of joining Father at the belt foundry looming over me, your toast couldn't say it any better," Alexander said. Just then, chants for Tsar echoed, growing louder and louder. "We should go, they want Tsar," I said. The Count motioned for us to join him when we re-entered the ballroom. In one hand, he held an unopened telegram high above his head. He positioned Alexander to his left and me to his right with Tsar. I looked at Papa, and his face was hard and still, like a stone embedded at the bottom of a river. As much as I willed them to, his eyes wouldn't meet mine. "Does everyone have a full glass?" the Count asked. Some hands were raised among the crowd, and servants quickly attended to them. The Count cleared his throat. "It's not every day that a kennel discovers a gem as fine as Tsar among the bunch. He represents what every kennel strives for: courage, strength, speed, and exceptional pluck." I looked down at Tsar and stroked his head. Papa would have no choice but to make him the top stud dog. Life on the estate would be different for Tsar. "It takes generations of careful breeding to develop a line of dogs worthy of the Tsar." The Count raised his glass high. "That's why I've decided to pass the kennel down to my son. It has been his dream to make something of this kennel, and he's done so. With help, of course. Through the successful breeding of Tsar, let's toast to my son's future success. After Alexander clinked glasses with his father, he clinked glasses with me. Thank you, Laura. We owe you a great deal of gratitude. Your dream is coming true, I said to him. The Count patted Tsar on the head and continued. What I saw in Tsar in the hunt for the Red Thief is nothing we can train a dog to do. What Tsar has comes from deep within him, and despite his smaller size, and maybe because of it too, Tsar uses it to his advantage. He is agile and quick. He is courageous and clever. His pluck is peerless. Because of all these sound traits, I feel it isn't fair to hoard him to ourselves. The Count rested his hand on my shoulder. We have a fine litter from Tsar to carry on his line. That's why I've offered to present Tsar to His Imperial Majesty Tsar Nicholas, and in this telegram which has just arrived, I suspect is his response. As the Count opened the telegram, I looked to Alexander, wondering if he knew about this. From the gape of his mouth, he seemed just as shocked as I felt. Then I looked at Papa. I could see that he too hung on every word. I searched for Mama in the crowd and found her warm amber eyes, willing me to be strong. The Count's face blossomed into a huge smile as he read the words. The Tsar has accepted! My crystal flute slipped from my hand and crashed to the floor. Forgive me, I kept saying. Servers appeared and swept up the shards of glass all around me. I stood motionless, rooted to the ground like a dead tree refusing to fall. The Count glanced over at me with a puzzled look. Once another glass of champagne was in my hand, he continued with his toast. Let's drink to our success, he proposed. He nodded to Papa first, and then to Alexander, whose mouth was still agape, and lastly to me. He even nodded to Tsar. I watched everyone around me drink and tried to raise my glass to my lips, but my fingers felt like wet noodles, and I dropped that flute too. And that's the end of chapter 13.